Hit the recording. Thank you. Thank you, Brian.
I'm getting better.
And I remember not to talk over the recording in progress. So together we're a team. Okay, welcome everybody to the Finance Committee on Tuesday, July 16th at 4 p.m. This meeting is being audio and video recorded, so just make sure that everything you do screen share will actually be captured. And I will call the meeting to order because we are fully remote. There is a little script, which is all the everything that we go through has to go through the chair. Everything will be a roll call vote. And I will, please raise your hand to be recognized, and I will then recognize you. And so that's basically the ground rules for these meetings that are fully remote. And with that, may I have, there is one adjustment to the agenda that I need to make, which is that the Article 6, the General Amendment Bylaw, short-term rentals, Stephen Cohen is the sponsor. We will postpone it till the 22nd of July, till next Monday. If he is able to attend, that would be fabulous because it means he's well on the way to recovery. If he isn't, then I have spoken to Penny Dye and she will attend in his place. So that is off our agenda for today. So we will only be discussing of the scheduled articles that we're discussing, Article 5 and Article 7. So with that, I will ask for an approval of the amended agenda.
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Roll call. Joe?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes, aye.
Jill?
Aye.
Jeremy?
Aye.
Joanna?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
Thank you, Denise. Aye. Great. Okay, I'm going to open it up for public comment. This is for any item that is not on our agenda. If there's a member of the public that wants to make a comment at this time, please raise your hand. And seeing none, I will close it for public comment. Okay, great. All right, before we get started on the warrant article discussion, a couple key messages. Number one, I already mentioned, Article 6 will be postponed until the 22nd of July. I will enforce strict time limits today. It will be 5 minutes for the sponsors to tell us why you are looking for obviously what your article is about and why you would want a positive motion from the Finance Committee. After that, I am slightly changing it from what we did last night, and I'm going to then go right to the committee members to ask their questions. And then after that, I will ask for members of the public to make comments, and they will be limited to 2 minutes each. So, and I will be very strict about timekeeping. It's excellent practice for all of you for town meeting. So you're welcome. And then the other thing I want to just highlight is, to the FinCom members themselves. I think it's important for us to remember that our responsibility as members of the Finance Committee is to the voters of Nantucket, which means this has been a topic that's been in front of the voters for 4 years now. It has been confusing at the best of times. It has been complicated. And so anything that we do as a committee that can help it be easier for the voters who are very well informed, who put the time in, and even with all of the effort that everyone does put in as a voter here to contribute to this community in a constructive way, it's still a lot. So we have effectively 7 articles on the warrant, 4 zoning and 3 general bylaw articles in relation to short-term rentals. So it will be important as we go through our deliberations to keep in mind, who we're working for, which is really for the voters. So it's just, I wanted to frame that before we get started. Okay, so with that, Pamela, if I'm going to be so bold as to call you Pamela versus Ms. Perrin. So you're muted, Pamela, so. Still muted. Brian, are you able to unmute Pamela?
She's unmuted now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for being here.
Okay, thank you for asking me to come. First, I wanted to assure you that I do not own or operate a short-term rental. And as far as I know, neither has anyone else in my family in the 90 years we've been here. This warrant article is simply a technical amendment to fix a drafting problem with Article 60 that was passed in May. Fixing its language will give the voters the result they intended, which was to prohibit commercial, investment-driven short-term rentals. By investment-driven, I don't mean a property owned by an individual or family with ties to Nantucket that is rented in the Nantucket tradition. I mean a property owned by a business that invests other people's money in a portfolio of properties owned and operated on Nantucket and elsewhere. I'm a retired tax and pension lawyer, and throughout my career, I've done a fair amount of work with investment managers and businesses. They want access to where the money is, the trillions of dollars stored in tax-advantaged retirement plans. Pension lawyers are often involved with how they structure their businesses. The problem with Article 60 is that it only prohibited a corporation from operating an STR. It didn't prohibit partnerships, which is the type of business structure typically used by private equity, hedge funds, and similar less regulated investment entities. And it didn't prohibit real estate investment trusts, commonly called REITs, which are mutual funds that invest in and operate real estate properties. And to the eyes of a tax lawyer, its definition of corporation is poor. As a general rule, real estate investment dollars will more typically flow into partnerships and REITs than a corporation for tax reasons. In a corporation, both the business and the investors pay taxes on their earnings. But a partnership and a REIT are what is called pass-through entities, in that they don't pay taxes on their earnings that they pay out to investors. Only those investors pay taxes on their distributions. So partnerships and REITs are generally the more common form of business structure for real estate investments. To give the voters what they believed they were getting from Article 60, the definition section of Chapter 132 must be amended to include appropriate definitions of corporations, partnerships, and REITs. So I went looking for some that met my professional standards, and guess where I found them? On Broad Street in the Land Bank. Its rules have definitions that are sophisticated, extensive, professional, and relevant to STR regulation. I was impressed. My article adopts the Land Bank's definitions of a corporation and protects the carve-out we adopted in Article 60 for family and estate planning trusts. The definition of a partnership comes directly from the Land Bank regs, while the definition of a REIT comes from my personal favorite, the Internal Revenue Code. These are good definitions used by the Land Bank successfully for decades. We understand what they mean, and Nantucket needs to speak with one voice in its real estate laws. By adopting these existing definitions, we will prevent lawyers from looking for ambiguities and loopholes in our regulations and arbitraging definitions in litigation. So you had some other questions listed that I should answer, the first of which was about the research I did. Well, I really didn't do any research because I have 30 years of experience practicing law in this field in major law firms in Boston and Washington, D.C., as well as writing on related policy issues with such institutions as the Urban Institute, the Aspen Institute, the Boston College Center for Retirement Research, and AARP. As to financial implications, I have not identified any. As to administration, it looks like existing procedures and personnel are sufficient when they are fully up to speed. And as to stakeholders, the stakeholders have already spoken. The voters clearly intended to prohibit these types of investment properties from operating short-term rentals when they passed Article 60. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Perfect. Thank you, Pamela. Okay, I'll Peter Schaefer, over to you, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. John, can you comment on your feeling about partnerships and REITs, whether it would be anything detrimental to what was passed if we did what Pamela's asking?
John, you're muted.
No, Peter, I don't think it would be detrimental. I do have a couple of comments, though. I guess I'm the author. I am the one who wrote the very poor definition of corporation. But I wanted to point out that this was something that was discussed at length with the short-term rental work group. And one of the things that came out of those discussions was the work group felt that the definition should include both for-profit and nonprofit corporations being subject to Chapter 123. And I guess I would ask Pamela, does her amendment capture nonprofit corporations? Because I did not see where it does.
Well, I think looking at the Rand Bank regulations, which are now part of the definition of corporation, it says any entity organized which is taxable as a corporation under the Internal Revenue Code, or which would be taxable thereunder as a corporation if it had become taxable under the Internal Revenue Code. And I think that's lawyer speak for-profit and nonprofit corporations.
So are you saying it would apply to nonprofit corporations?
That is the definition from the Land Bank. What type of nonprofit corporation would you think would be operating a short-term rental?
Well, I would defer back to the short-term rental work group, but my recollection was that there are nonprofit entities on the island that own quite a bit of property and dwelling units, and that they should be subject to the same, and I don't mean to speak for the committee, but that they should be subject to the same restrictions that we put in Chapter 60. That's, I'm just pointing it out that was one of the reasons why we decided to defer to the general laws for the definition of both corporations, both for-profit and nonprofit corporations. But that's really it's more of a policy question, Pamela, whether or not these regulations should apply to nonprofits. I can tell you the short-term rental work group felt that they should. So that's why I asked the question.
Well, there's
Okay,
already.
so Pamela,
Yes, go ahead.
number one, I have to recognize you before you
Okay.
talk. Okay, so
Okay.
first I'm going to go, thank you. I'm going to go, Joe Wright raised his hand, and then Jill, and then I'll come back to that discussion because their questions may.
John answered my question.
John answered your question? Okay, then never mind, Joe. Jill,
No, I didn't raise my hand. It was.
you were just waving at me? Okay.
Yeah, I just waving at
All right.
Pamela. Thank you for being here.
Pamela, go ahead, and then Peter, I'll go to you.
Okay, I would have to say that I would find it strange to find nonprofit corporations investing in short-term rentals because the tax code has an extreme deterrent in having for-profit corporations compete with nonprofit corporations compete with for-profit corporations. There's a very large tax called the unrelated business income tax that would apply to any of those earnings that a nonprofit corporation would accrue. So I would, unless you could provide me with some facts about a nonprofit corporation that actually is running a short-term rental business, I would have to say that the tax code has already disposed of this issue.
Peter Schaefer?
Thanks, Madam Chair. John, when you say short-term rental working group, you're talking about the original one?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
My question is, thank you, Peter. My question is, families don't have partnerships? So when you say, when you talk about a partnership, could people that are members of a family have a partnership instead of an LLC, as an example, or an S corp?
That would be covered, I believe, under the carve out that was adopted in Article 60, which would exclude limited liability companies and S corporations, which I believe would also cover family partnerships.
However, if your article explicitly states partnerships, it doesn't necessarily, I mean, first off, Article 60 hasn't been approved by the Attorney General,
Right.
so we're changing something that's currently in flight, which I think is confusing and is confusing. Well, it's confusing. So as I stated at the beginning of the meeting, our goal is to be less confusing for the voters this time around, so we can see if we can get to a solution, a compromise solution that the community is looking for. John, I'll go to you.
It's unfortunate that Steve is not able to join us today because Pamela did present this to the subcommittee, which is, I don't mean the original work group, but the subcommittee that was chaired by Tom and Malcolm. And Steve raised a number of questions about Pamela's warrant article in terms of unintended consequences. And the and during those deliberations, I advised the subcommittee that we really should not pass any amendments to Chapter 123 while Article 60 is still pending approval with the Attorney General, that this town meeting should really focus on the zoning piece, which is the one where people are in most legal jeopardy, a phrase I like to use quite a bit. And my thought was, and my recommendation was, let's get the zoning piece done. We may have to, or not have to, but we may want to make some revisions to Chapter 123 for the Springtown meeting. At that point, Article 60 hopefully will be approved, certainly can be amended. And rather than rush headlong into an amendment to the definition of corporations that's contained in Pamela's article, I think it would be prudent to wait and look at this for the Springtown meeting. I know reasonable minds can disagree on that, but this is complicated stuff, both the zoning and the general bylaw, and I think it's a mistake to feed the voters too much information at one time.
Didn't
So that's
find
my
it.
recommendation.
Hold on a second, John. Kathy, can you please mute? So whatever they're looking for, I hope they found it, but we would like to skip that. So, okay, thank you, John. All right. Members of the committee, any other comments or questions? I will open it up to members of the public. If anybody else wants to speak to this article. I do not see any hands raised, so I'm going to make a motion to close the public comments. May I have a second? Peter seconded.
Second,
Second,
Thank you. By roll call, Jeremy,
aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Jill,
Hi.
Rob,
Aye.
Joanna,
Aye.
Peter,
aye.
Denise, I. Okay, public comment is closed. So at this point, we'll go to deliberations. And then during our deliberations, Pamela, if we have questions, then of course you can answer the questions. Thank you very much. Okay. All right, committee. Peter.
Based on what John said, Madam Chair, I'm sorry. Based on what
That's all
John
right.
said, I think we should take no action on this and bring it back up again at the spring meeting. So I'm making a
Okay.
motion for take no action.
Joe?
Madam Chair, I agree with Peter, but I've got to tell you that the presentation that we had from the sponsor is the best that I think I've ever seen. And I know I can tell that an awful lot of work has been done. And I feel badly delaying it, but I think the reason is a good one.
Okay. Is there, okay, any further discussion on the motion itself?
Do we need
Okay.
a,
And in which case, may I have a second?
I second.
Okay, so Peter made the motion and Joanna seconded. Now that it's quote unquote live, the motion of take no action. Any further discussion on the motion before we go to a roll call vote? Okay, thank you. Hold on a second. I've got to write notes, otherwise I won't remember later. Thank you. Okay, Peter. And the
Aye.
motion is take no action. Okay, thank you. Joe,
Aye.
Jill,
Aye.
Jeremy,
Aye.
Joanna,
Aye.
Rob,
Aye.
and Denise, aye. It's unanimous.
Denise Stevens
That-
on.
Stephen's recused.
Got it. Sorry.
Yeah, he's just a member of the public today, Joanna. Thank you for keeping me honest. Okay, Pamela, thank you. All right, next one up is Article 7, General Bylaw Amendment, Short-Term Rentals, Matt Peel. Matt, do you prefer Matt or Matthew?
Whatever you're comfortable with. It's fine.
Well,
So, Matt's fine.
happy-
Matt's fine.
I'm
Yep.
happy to go with how you'd like to be called, so.
Matt's fine. Yeah, that's fine. Matt Fee's not on here, so we can go
Yeah,
with
so
Matt.
you're,
Don't get any confused.
okay, good. All right, thank you. So you saw the practice session, or not the practice session, you saw the starting session with Pamela, so I think it's straightforward. Same thing, 5 minutes, and then I'll turn to the committee for questions. And from there, we will then open it up after that to if there's any members of the public that want to speak. So I will turn it over to you, Matt. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Unfortunately, I don't have a big presentation like Pamela did. I know it's a tough tough act to follow there. But I'll be the first to admit this article needs a little bit of work. It was rushed. We had a rushed timeline on there. I really wanted to address the complaint side of things that we hear from these short-term rentals. And so I kind of added these in there. I think it does need some cleaning up personally. I hear Giorgio's and how we're kind of focused on zoning. And I'm still thinking about that. Our group is still thinking about that. I have a hard time kind of putting this on the back burner when it took me 45 minutes to go 1.5 miles today. There's a lot of people that are really upset in this town. These last couple of weeks have been really tough. And so I don't think that's necessarily just short-term rental fault. I think that has a lot to do with the amount of building and the workers that we have on this island right now. But I also think that there needs to be some of these things need to be addressed sooner rather than later. We can talk about them or we can cut to the chase and just kind of, get everybody done with their day or continue with their day and, go take no action. And we're still kind of figuring out what we want to do. We may do some floor amendments or we may just choose to go with the take no action and then say, see you in May, and bring a new article with some of these general bylaws and see where we're at then, or see what passes zoning wise. I think there's a lot up in the air right now. But just to address a few of the things, if you guys did have it, I'm more than happy to answer some of the questions. I know Giorgio kind of did a spreadsheet for our work group as well. And just to address a few of those, one of the things I did leave out, which we addressed in the zoning one, is the $5,000. I forgot to put civil in there, so so that was addressed in the zoning, so that could be taken out. I'm still researching the funds generated. I guess we can't designate, the Board of Health can't designate employee or from the short-term rental tax. I would like to see if there's a way to work that out. I think it'd be great to have a full-time STR inspector that could possibly double as as like a Board of Health or a health inspector as well. I think that would be great for the town. I'm just kind of going down the list here. I know, like I said, George, you had a couple concerns. Couple of the other ones in here. I know the floor map. I know when they I believe it was article, was it 30 or when they do the short-term rental registration, they submit a floor plan. But my idea was, and I'm sorry it wasn't worded clearly, kind of like hotels do, have a floor plan posted in the STR in the house showing means of egress and all of that. So if you have a short-term renter that comes in, they know exactly where each means of egress, escapes are, fire, maybe possibly put out fire extinguishers, that kind of thing. Just a simple floor map. That way they know their way out, or if they have guests over or something, there's a fire, they know how to get out, all of that. Just kind of like you have on the back of a door in a hotel room. Trying to remember what else here. Sorry, I should have pulled up your list, John, but I'm deep in the emails at this point.
Right.
I can imagine. So it was you put in charge. Oh,
Yeah, sorry. Sorry to interrupt. Am I okay to
that's
go?
okay. Yeah, you've got about another 45 seconds.
Okay. And two things I really want to see is no on-street parking. I think that needs to be adjusted because there are places in town that maybe excludes like the historic district or something. Because there are places in town that just don't have any on property parking, so they're limited to on-street parking. But I think anything that's maybe in the country overlay could be limited to only or no on-street parking. I think that would help. A lot of people complain about the parking with STRs. And then the last one is develop. I would like to really see an online complaint form, someplace for people to actually upload and send, maybe more than just an email. Because right now we have the hotline, but you can't send in videos, you can't send in photographs and things like that. And so I just think that would help encourage some more enforcement. So I'm happy to answer any questions if you'd like.
Great, thanks, Matt. Peter?
Yeah, Matt, thanks for the work. Couple things. Number one is you said you put this together in 45 minutes.
No.
I think that alone is reason for us to think about holding it till the next town meeting so that it can be refined. But it's just based on what you said.
Did I say 45? Sorry. I'll wait my turn to talk.
Okay. Did you meet with the police department and the fire department at all
For what?
to discuss what you're talking about in your bylaw?
What do they have to do with?
Well, if you're going to put up something on how to get out of the house in case of a fire, you want to talk to the fire department about that in terms of the proper way to do that. Okay, Matthew, I understand what you're trying to do here. I just think it was done quick, and I think that for sake of this bylaw, if you really want to see this pass, I think it should be refined and polished and then represented.
Thank you, Peter. I'm going to go to John, if you don't mind. Jill had her hand up. But Matt, do you want to clarify how long it took you to write it? Because I think it wasn't 45 minutes.
No, it wasn't 45. I'm sorry, I didn't think I said that, but if that's what you heard.
didn't.
Thank you. Yeah, so no, it took a little bit longer than that. We researched, I researched a lot of other towns and bylaws and what they've enacted. And it's a lot of listening to the community and what the number one complaints are. And people want to see enforcement is obviously the big factor here, but a way of being heard more than just a hotline. Was the one big parking is one of the number one complaints when it comes to STRs. And then I was thinking safety as well, a floor plan. I worked in the hotel business for years. It's I don't know that police department and fire department have a lot to do with maybe talk to a building inspector or something, but I don't know that police department, you know. It's an exit's an exit. Window is a window. It's identifying exits and, you know, if they have a fire extinguisher, things like that, minimum levels of safety and security. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Jill?
I think, Peter, what Matthew said is it took him 45 minutes to get downtown today. It'd been tough in traffic the last 2 weeks. That's what I heard him say. But
Yeah.
and with that, Matthew, I have kind of a broad question. Do you hate the island 12 months a year or just these 2 months a year?
I don't hate the island at all.
But I mean, you think it's
Why would
miserable.
you-
You said that. You said it was miserable. Is it just miserable for these 8 weeks, or are there 12, or there 16? I'm just trying to get a timeline because you all did focus on, you did kind of narrow down to July and August. So I was curious if that's really the time that you're most annoyed or upset or thinks egregious.
I think the traffic is egregious. Like I said, I don't think that has all to do with short-term rentals. So what I'm not quite sure what gave you that impression. I mean, yeah, it's have you not been affected by the traffic?
Yeah, but I'm personally pretty happy here. The other times a year, I don't think I'm entitled to 12 months of like no traffic, or, you know, living in a beautiful, amazing place and not having some inconveniences when it is the best weather and the best time to be here. I just don't have a problem with that personally, but I understand that people do, and I heard other issues coming out of what you said. So that's why I wanted to ask you, like, have you thought about looking at other issues instead of just focusing on short-term rentals? That's what I wanted to know. You seem laser focused on this one issue there. You mentioned a lot of issues that I don't think are that issue that are bothering you. And I want to encourage you to do that, because I feel like they're taking the brunt of all the problems, and I don't know that they're creating them. We don't have the data that shows they're creating all those problems.
No, and I agree with you there. But this is also a tool, you know, to help with that as well. You know, I'm listening right now. I'm focused on this. And now that I've gone through this process and understand our town, excuse me, town government, you know, that's a good suggestion. I may pursue other articles that do address other things in this town, other issues or problems. You know, Nantucket Neighbors is looking that as well, and there's a lot more in short-term rentals we would like to address. Excuse me, can't talk today.
But I want to encourage that, because I feel like everyone's laser focused on this one issue, and you're talking about a much bigger issue. I think that other things could, you know, maybe you can look at curfews and time for people to call in for noise variant, you know, change the noise variants if you want to. But I just, again, I feel like so much of what happens in this discussion is we're listening to a lot of anecdotes, and I'm not saying they aren't true, but they aren't like in a database, right? It's all this, we're talking like, why do you not like that short-term rental? Oh, those people were terrible. Okay, well, you know, that's like it's anecdotal. We don't have the noise complaints even on paper through the police department that validate everything I'm hearing from everybody in these hearings. And that's kind of what's bothering me, is I'd rather find things that were more kind of data driven.
Thank you, Jill. John, you had your hand up?
Yes, because I did provide quite a bit of comment on this bylaw, but some of it may not be quite as obvious as it should be. My prior comment about not amending Chapter 123 at this town meeting stands for this article as well. But beyond that, I think this article, as well-intentioned as it is, needs a lot of work. And if I could just take time, I don't want to repeat things, but, you know, the first change is to have a two-tiered fee system for town residents and non-town residents. And in my practice, I'm already seeing legal challenges to fees that have been established, registration fees specifically for short-term rentals. And essentially, you have to be able to demonstrate that the fee is reasonably related to the services that are being provided. And so I would question whether the proposer has really thought about what are the impacts to the town in terms of administering and enforcing this registration program for residents versus non-residents. Secondly, I think it does create at least an issue under the Commerce Clause because you're treating residents more favorably than non-residents. And this is not very nimble. If you want to change these fees in the future, you have to come back to town meeting to amend the bylaw. Whereas Chapter 123 in its current form basically defers that to the Board of Health regulations with the approval of the Select Board. So those are the three reasons why I think that provision, I would not recommend it. Let me put it that way. The next change in E is very strange to me that a bylaw would direct the Board of Health how to allocate its personnel. I'm not even sure that's within the purview of a bylaw. It's up to town administration. It's and the Board of Health staff to figure out how to allocate resources. Now, yes, there will be quite a few. There will be a lot of revenue generated from these fees, but that's obviously going to require the hiring of staff by town administration to provide that kind of resource to the Board of Health. And I think it's a mistake for a bylaw, if not illegal, to direct the Board of Health how to allocate staff. That's an executive function, not a legislative function. Subparagraph B is very problematic, and I've pointed it out. It mixes the concept of non-criminal disposition with a civil penalty, and those are two very different things. I think we need to be careful how we address that. I believe the issue of a suspension for a period of 1 calendar year, which is being added, I think that's already in Chapter 123, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm not quite sure what that accomplishes. And then the issue of on-street parking and all that, I totally get that. But I would remind everyone that Chapter 123 authorizes the Board of Health to enact regulations with the approval of the Select Board. And I think a lot of these things, in terms of inspections and floor plans, and in this instance, on-street parking, that would be much better left to regulations rather than incorporated into the bylaw. Again, because you want your bylaw, you want this program to be nimble, you want to be able to address things without necessarily waiting for a town meeting to make changes. So those are my comments to this.
Thank you, John. So under 123-5-5-C, so the certificate of registration can be suspended after a hearing at the Board of Health for violations, and after multiple violations, it can be suspended for a period of up to 3 years. So yes, that is already in 123.
Yeah, and I'm not sure, Denise, what the STR committee is referring to. Because I believe in the existing 123, that's really a function for the Board of Health to decide whether to revoke a registration. The Board of Health is administering the program. This references something new to me, an STR committee. I'm not sure what that is or what what Matthew intended. Now, those are all drafting issues that we could clean up. But I am concerned about the two-tier fee structure and making sure that we don't mess up the enforcement section. So
okay, thank you, John. Jeremy?
I'd like to propose that we take no action.
Okay, thank you. Is there, Joe?
So I would second that.
Okay, well, before we go to deliberations on that, I want to ask if there's any members of the public that want to speak to Matthew's article before I close it for public comment. I don't see any hands raised. I mean, Matthew, or Matt, one of the things I would point, I was impressed with your comment at the last steering committee meeting, or the subcommittee meeting. I can't remember what all these committees are called. I have to say, my brain is not big enough for all the names of all the committees on Nantucket. Anyway, the last meeting that we had, where I was just an observer, obviously you and Charity were members. I remember you putting your hand up saying it might make sense to take a step back and get an article that if we are going to amend 123, that we do it in a more holistic way, where all the people who put in general bylaws also sat down and did what they did for the, oh my gosh, my brain is frozen. The other one.
Yeah, zoning.
Thank you. Oh my gosh. For the zoning article, as you can tell, I don't do well in heat. That's why I don't live on the equator. So that did for the zoning to come up to a compromise article that then made sense to the majority of people. So I mean, that was, and you did open your comments today with that might be something that is amenable to you. So do you want to say anything else before I close it for public comment?
Yeah, that was supposed to be the intention, I think, with the work group as well. We just ran out of time.
Ran
and
out of time. Yeah.
Didn't get there. And so,
Yeah.
unfortunately, it's, and like I said, I completely think this needs a little bit of cleaning up, but I think it does address a few issues, that we've heard from the community loud and clear that they're concerned with. And just to touch on one thing that John said, the fee structure, we talked about that quite a bit in our group. There is precedence with the boats. There is precedence with the boats as far as what they do for the fee structure. Hold on, Daddy's talking. And so that's where I was going with that. And really, this was more a push with enforcement. That's the number one thing everybody says. We could vote for this, we could vote for that, but there's no enforcement. And this is really a push. So the town, if it's legal or it's not, I understand that. But for the town to designate somebody and have somebody there who's an STR enforcer, and then the committee was something we had talked about. I didn't get in there. Have a committee separate from the, sorry, my girls are talking.
That's okay.
Have a committee separate from the Board of Health that's only focused on STRs, that could do something like, it didn't make it into this zoning article, but that could do something like sorry, I'm drawing a blank here, distract me. A hardship committee or a hardship and things like that, and review complaints and all of that.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Matt. So thank you for that. And then with that, may I have a motion to close the public comment?
So moved.
So moved.
In
Second.
a second. Thank you. So Jeremy, we're voting on the motion to close the public comment.
Aye.
Thank you. Joe? Peter?
Aye.
Joanna?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
Jill?
Aye.
Denise, aye. Okay, public comment is closed. We have a motion on the table, take no action in a second. Is there any further discussion on the motion from members of the committee? Seeing none, I'll take us right to a vote. Okay, Joe?
Aye.
Peter?
Aye.
Joanna?
Aye.
Jill?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
Jeremy?
Aye.
Denise, aye. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Matthew. All right, the date, is there any, the next agenda item is discussion and potential recommendations of warrant articles for special town meeting 2024. Is there anyone that wants to speak to any of the other articles that are on the warrant? I will remind people that we have our public hearing on Thursday at the community room. at 4 Fairgrounds. So that is when we go through it article by article, if anyone wants to speak then, but you can also speak now. And seeing no hands raised, I'm moving on to date of next meeting, which I already just previewed. It's Thursday, July 18th at 4 p.m. in the community room. We do not have any specific articles scheduled that day. I will just go through and read them out and see if anyone wants to speak to any of them. For the people, anything that has to do with zoning, we are not taking that up until July 22nd. Because we wanted to give the planning board enough time. We weren't sure that they would finish yesterday, and they had a meeting scheduled for the 18th as a follow-up meeting. So we will be doing the zoning articles on July 22nd, along with article, I lost the number. Anyway, I don't have it in front of me, but it's the NP and EDC article. And now Stephen Cohen's article, Article 6. Okay, is there any other business from members of the committee? Seeing none, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Everybody leaps on that one. Okay, before we adjourn, I wanted to say, John, thank you for being here. Brian, thank you very much, much appreciated. And Libby, as always. So a motion to adjourn, and Jeremy,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Joanna,
Aye.
Rob,
Aye.
Jill,
Aye.
Denise, aye. Thank you very much, everybody. We'll see you on Thursday in person at the community room. Thank you.
Aye, guys.